Yeah, beat your addiction, live free. Ralf Friedrichs is who you see. Listen in when you're feeling low. Take back your life, today's show. Beat your addiction, live free. Ralf Friedrichs is who you see. Listen in when you're feeling low. Take back your life, today's show. Stay positive, hope, and keep faith. Stand strong against any odds that you face. Put away the alcohol and the drugs. Fill your time with the things you love. Addiction is tough, but it's worth the work. Treat your body what it's worth. Spread positivity, inspire all. If we stand together, we will never fall. I help others see the other sides of life. A sober life, letting go of the strife. So give me a call, I can help. 1-844-4405-HELP. Homeless shelters, hospitals, jails, wherever you are. I am Ralf Friedrichs and I am here for you. 1-844-405-HELP. Yeah, change your future, starts today. Live life to the fullest, never skip a day. Create hope, spread positivity. Beat your addictions and negativity. Ralf Friedrichs is here for you. Call today so we can help you. 1-844-405-HELP. 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 We are here for you. Call us today.
Hello, my name is Ralf Friedrichs. I'm an addiction recovery coach and the host of the Take Your Life Back Today show. As an addiction recovery coach, I'm going to share something with you. Let me be crystal clear to leave an everlasting impact upon you. Imagine it. Just imagine being buried alive. You're in a coffin, but you know you're not dead. You don't know how to get out of that coffin. You try to lift the lid. The enormous weight prevents you from opening that lid. You try banging on the lid to unsettle the dirt. Maybe somebody will start noticing the dirt move on top and they'll start digging their way down towards you. No one sees you. No one hears you. This is what it's like to find yourself at the lowest point of alcohol and drug addiction. You know you need help. You know you can't do it on your own. But you never knew who to turn to. You just think you're going to die. Usually, though, people don't think about death when they're habitually abusing drugs and alcohol. In order to repress the fear of death, you have to have no fear of dying. With this, let me leave one last thought. Don't be the person that I read about on these index cards during every single show that waited and waited and waited and never got help. Instead, pick up the phone at 844-405-HELP, or you can text me at 631-599-0218, and together you and I can help you take your life back. For your life is gone. Larry Geis can also help take your life back. 516-458-2741. Larry Geis has 30 years experience as a life coach and addiction recovery coach. You can find him at www.odysseyconsultant.org. Larry Geis and I promise to help you. Larry Geis and I will tell you it doesn't matter what your background is or where you came from. What matters is that you're here, getting in touch with Larry or myself, so we can give you a better today and a brighter tomorrow. Larry Geis, 516-458-2741. I want to talk about substituting addictions. Many people will substitute one addiction for another during or after recovery process from their original addiction. Are these people, let me just fix this, are these people destined to become addicts for life? Or are they just jumping from drug to drug? Battling a never-ending cycle of recovery and relapse can be tough. It is commonly believed that once you've had one addiction, you're at a greater risk of developing another one. The concept of an addictive personality has been around for decades, and it might show up the once and addict always addict ideology of the 12-step programs. Indeed, many people will substitute one addiction for another during or after recovery process from their original addiction. Are these people destined to become addicts for life, so to speak, battling a never-ending cycle of relapse? Are they? Not necessarily. Most quality treatment programs teach about the likelihood of picking up another detrimental addiction after receiving treatment for one disorder. And most people in recovery know that they are susceptible to other addictions. Dr. Denny Carey's chief clinical advisor of the Syrian Tucson Treatment Facility in Arizona says almost everyone in recovery from a substance use disorder knows that they need to give significant thought and be very, very careful if they decide to engage in behaviors that are known to have addictive potential. In fact, the recent paper published by researchers at Columbia University in Manhattan at the Psychiatric Institute showed that addicts who have remitted from addiction were less likely to acquire a new one. So what's up with that, you might ask? Should we be worried about substitute addictions, especially if they're not necessarily harming us in any way? Well, what is a substitute addiction? Everyone who's battling addiction understands the concept. You go from smoking to eating, from drinking to shopping, from sex to chocolate to working. You're substituting one addiction for another in an attempt to compensate for the perceived lack, emotionally or psychological, other addiction. It's important to distinguish addictions that happen at the same time. Co-occurring is what it's called, and substitute addictions happen that way. In a paper co-authored by Dr. Steven Sussman, a professor of preventive medicine and psychology at the University of Southern California, he characterized 11 relatively common behaviors as addictions: tobacco use, alcohol use, illicit drug use, binge eating, gambling, internet use, love, sex, exercise, work, and shopping, and then reviewed 83 studies, each over 500 subjects, to see which behaviors were most prevalent over a 12-month period. They found that 23% of people had one or more addictions or occurring addictions. Interestingly, a whopping 40% of all U.S. adults had at least one addiction in their life. Two other general types of addicts, according to the same study, are people who have substitute addictions, that is, where one addiction takes the place of a previous terminated addictive behavior in order to serve the same functions, and people who only have one addiction in their lifetimes have a good chance of picking up that second. Substitute addictions aim to serve the same purpose of the original. For example, dopamine plays a large part or a large role, as the same mesonomic pathways are activated in all kinds of addictions, whether substance or behavioral. After getting sober, many people feel the lack of, neurotransmitter dopamine, also known as anhedonia, or inability to experience pleasure in the positive life events. One solution to this, Sussman believes, is to engage in so-called positive addictions that are likely to jumpstart experience of pleasure in somewhat regular basis, while these could also have a negative effect. Addictions like exercise, work, a hobby, reading, gaming, or movies would be at least less destructive than using or engaging in risky sex, gambling, or other things. What are some of the most common substitutes for addictions? There has not been a lot of research looking at the substitute addiction list. Of those studies that have shown an overrating in a common substitute addiction for drug abuse, particularly for drinkers. Additionally, some people use drugs after they recover from, let's say, bulimia, and vice versa. In one study dating back to 1993, the researchers found that up to 25% of alcoholics sampled who had at least 1 year of sobriety substituted eating desserts, smoking cigarettes, and working more up to 36 months. A study from 2004 found that patients being treated for alcohol dependence, 15% started smoking cigarettes for the first time. Use of anti-anxiety medications such as benzodiazepines is not the first option among many clinics interviewed due to their addictive qualities. And possibility of becoming just another substitute addiction is very high for those folks. Says Sierra Tucson's Carice, it's fair to say that more than 65% of people who have received treatment at our clinic are having difficulties with more than one of the following: alcohol, drug, eating disorders, excessive gambling, impulse control, depression, and anxiety. Addictive personalities, addiction syndrome. Essentially, not all addicts are the same, and not all pathways to addictions are the same. There are overlapping factors that influence whether someone will become addicted to a drug or the process. Genetics or neurochemistry affect the tendency toward addiction, as well as the environmental and social factors. I think there are several different types of relatively stable features that predict addiction proneness. For instance, sensation seeking, endophonia, positive or negative urgencies, says Sussman. I doubt there's one type of addictive personality. There are a few different ones. It appears that there are people who are more likely to become addicts than others. There is no single set of characteristics that individualizes who becomes addicted and who does not, but there are some that are more common among people with addictive problems. These include an unusual tolerance for risk-taking, impulsivity, high sensation, extroversion, depression problems with authority roles, and feeling of social isolation. In fact, addictive personalities might be better described as someone who suffers from addictive syndrome. In 2004 paper describing the concept, Harvard Medical School Dr. Howard Schaefer outlined and shared traits that many addicts have in common, including genetic underpinnings as well as increased rates of comorbid anxiety, depression, and PTSD. It's important to keep in mind that if any individual has these traits, they are not doomed to have addiction problems, but they are at higher risk, says Carice. Be aware of sneaky substitute addictions. While some substitute addictions like exercise can be positive, healthy stepping stones to full and lasting recovery, some need to be treated or at least monitored in and of themselves. In the case of cross addiction or substitute addiction, a recovering alcoholic, for example, may turn to food as a source to reward and pleasure, says Columbia University Dr. Nicole Avena, a leading researcher on eating disorders. This relationship with food could develop into substitute addiction. In some ways, this may seem like a safer addiction to have, but it can be damaging, very distressful if the person is suffering. Or I should say to the person that's suffering. Recently there has been a surge in bariatric surgeries, and researchers are noting that once patients lose the weight, they end up with new addictions like alcoholism, gambling, or compulsive shopping. It's not really surprising considering the binge eating disorder is most similar of the eating disorders to food addiction. Food and drugs are hypothesized to affect the same pleasure and reward circuits of the brain. Bariatric surgery patients may use drugs or engage in other highly rewarding activities as a replacement for food addictions that, dominate before the surgery. Especially if the individual has a family history of substance abuse, he or she may be more likely to resort to drugs as a means of coping and obtaining the rewarding feeling normally sought for food. While many addicts turn to the 12-step programs for help getting sober, becoming addicted to your higher power is an actual and potential problematic substitute addiction. I don't believe that. That's me, personally. I don't think you can have enough of God. But you make that choice. But I am just telling you, the closer you are to your higher power, the easier killing your addiction is. Other work points to perils of becoming addicted to religion itself. Again, I don't believe this. There can be a negative consequence of relying on religion or spirituality, Sussman says, which treatment providers should be aware of. He writes that an addict in recovery may maintain potentially magical thinking that the higher power will fix him or her without engaging in corrective action. What they're saying here, folks, I always say this, that your higher power plays 95% of your recovery. You still need earthly help, and you definitely should get a sponsor or a coach of some sort, but utilize your higher power. Lasting recovery, whether addiction will be treated as a syndrome instead of a particular disorder in the future, many agree that getting the care of what drives your addictive tendencies is key to lasting recovery. Is being addicted to these 12 steps less harmful than using? It remains to be seen. It's still a fix that may be preventing someone from taking a more proactive role in changing his or own life. Right now, I think we need to educate our patients, our clients, and ourselves about the dangers, particularly in the early recovery, of other addictions that might crop up while you're eliminating one. Taking an active role in your recovery, learning how to identify triggers and manage the thoughts and feelings that are part of the addictive thinking patterns will go a long way to preventing relapse or substituting addictions that are doing more harm than good to you. You can never get addicted to your higher power enough. What they're saying is utilize your higher power and utilize some sort of earthly help here. But your higher power plays 95% of your recovery. Put on your slippers in the morning. Thank God for another beautiful day. Ask God for guidance and forgiveness. Ask God for mercy. Thank God for your food, your family, and your clothing. And put on those slippers and walk with God 24/7. And may God bless you.
Have you ever prayed but never got an answer, and wondered if God was really there? Did you feel all hope was gone, but in His time He came along and answered the prayer you thought was gone? There is no prayer too small, for God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. I have a ready few, will ask, you shall receive. No matter what it is, I still believe. There is no prayer too small, and even when we fall, He gives us just exactly what we need. There is no prayer too small, for God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. No prayer too small. He always knows what's right. God hears them all. There is no prayer too small. My God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. No prayer too small. No prayer too small.